Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Butterfield Bermuda Data Dive Show. We have everything to cover this evening to help you moving forward this week with any wagers and any lineup considerations for the Butterfield Bermuda. We're going to take a look at the forecast, and it's quite a doozy. We're going to take a look at the forecast. We're going to review some data from last night, and we're going to dig into whatever detail we can around Port Royal, considering this is technically an international event, no shot link data, but we're going to dig deep into the statistics that we can and analyze the field for this week. We got a lot to cover. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier today I posted some research around the previous 5 winners of the Butterfield Bermuda Championship, patterns that all 5 of those champions share, and the players in the field this week who also fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Really is a wonderful way to start your week of preparation. He continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of research. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday night, as he is gracious enough to host me over there. We talk about everything DFS. It's very informative, very entertaining. You really are missing out. So come join us over there, and the only way you're going to be able to do that, subscribe to that article. Go follow him over on social media as well. Show him some support, because we are going to start producing some content together, probably starting next week for the RSM, as we kind of launch into 2025 with that. So be on the lookout for that. And then finally, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Have you made any wagers for the Butterfield Bermuda? I put in a few for players at prices that I liked, or players in general that I liked for this week early on in my research. Who do you think is the early favorite? Have you seen the forecast, which we'll cover here in a moment? Who do you think that favors? Want to hear from you all in the community, so feel free to jump in chat. If you're not able to watch the show live, jump into the comments. We'll definitely be able to interact there as well. So want to hear from you all in the community. Feel free to jump in and participate in any way you wish. But let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the day for the 2024 Butterfield Bermuda Championship. And we start, as we always do, on a Monday night over at the extended forecast for Southampton and Port Royal. And you can see lots and lots and lots of big numbers. Big numbers in terms of wind. Looking like sustained winds into the 20s on Thursday. And then Friday looks like it might back down a little bit, but then gets extremely windy late in the day. Gusts into the mid-30s, maybe even into the 40-mile-an-hour range. Saturday looks atrocious. Sustained winds in the 30s. This looks like chaos. And I don't know how much they would be able to play if this forecast really came true. But all we can do is go by what the forecast is, 72 hours or so out from the tournament. Very clear, players are going to be dealing with wind. That is very, very clear as we move forward this week. So any considerations on players this week, you're going to want to factor in wind. As of now, you could probably argue that Friday AM would have the favorable half of the draw, but as we all know, this is just a forecast. Weather is fickle. It'll change. It's still too early in the week to call a wave advantage, but considering the forecast right now, you would have to say that the Friday AM portion has the favorable half of the draw. But there's a look at the forecast. Just utter chaos this week with winds, sustained into the 20s, into the 30s, gusting maybe near 40. Just mayhem. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National. And very, very clearly, we are going to check the moderate and windy filters. Last 36 rounds or 2 years. Your top performers in moderate and windy conditions in the past 36 rounds in the field this week: Brendan Todd, Andrew Novak, Patrick Rogers, Doug Gim, Mark Hubbard, Andrew Putnam, Lucas Glover, S.H. Kim, Jonathan Bird, and Nate Lashley. Those are your top 10 in terms of performance in the wind, moderate and windy conditions in the field this week. Let's see. A little bit further on down, maybe the top 15 or 20 or so: Justin Lauer, Rico Hoey, Streelman, Reevy, Carson Young, Norlander, Kevin Yu, Tyler Collett, Dylan Wu, and Chesson Hadley are your top 20. Other side of that coin, players who have not been good in the wind in the past 36 rounds or 2 years: Nick Watney, Kevin Kisner, ADDC, Adrian Dumont Deschessart, Marty Doe, Ryan Brim, Matthew Neesmith. A little surprising considering he's a ball striker, but has not been very good in the wind. Russell Knox, Carl Yuan, Seamus Power. Maybe a little bit deceptive here. I think he's been... Oh, whoops, wrong thing. I meant to go here. Seamus Power. He's actually been pretty good in his career in the wind. So something might not be totally getting caught up with that. Okay. So there you go. He's traditionally been pretty good in the wind, but you take a look at, his BMW, the Century, everything in 2023, 2024 was pretty bad in terms of wind, but he is much better in the wind than what is showing there. Snedeker, Vajegas, and so on down. Those are the players who have not been particularly impressive in the wind. Another way you can look at this, let's go with maybe instead of last 2 years, let's go 50 rounds, moderate and windy. And you'll see a couple of names here that are starred. I'll get to that here in a moment. But let's take a look at average. Display results as an average. I don't do this very often, but I think it'll help in this specific example. Your top players on a per round basis in moderate and windy conditions in the last 50 rounds, regardless of time: Rico Hoey, Daniel Berger, Brendan Todd, Andrew Novak, Michael Herrera. It's just 1 round, so don't get too carried away with that. That was from the Farmers in 2023. Patrick Rogers, Mark Hubbard, Ben Griffin, Nate Lashley, Putnam, Sam Stevens, Scott Piercy, Nick Taylor, so on down. You'll see 2 players who are starred. Taylor Montgomery and Joe Highsmith have withdrawn. They are not playing this week. Russell Knox was one of the alternates that took their place. I forget who the other alternate is. My apologies on that. But Taylor Montgomery and Joe Highsmith have withdrawn. But on a per round basis, those are your top performers in the wind in the past 50 rounds, regardless of time frame. And then at the bottom of this list, Tyler Collett, ADDC. Let's get some other notable names here. Maybe Watney, Tommy Gainey, Marty Doe, Carl Yuan, Zach Blair, not been good in the wind at all. Kevin Kisner, Sungmoon Bay, Snedeker, Russell Knox, Matty Schmid, not very good in the wind. Nico Echeverria, Camilo Villegas. And the reason I did this, Seamus Power was the kind of test case. He's still been pretty bad, but not necessarily as low as what was suggested when you went on a on a total basis. So there's a couple of different ways to look at some wind performance, and no matter who it is and what part of the draw they have this week, players are going to be dealing with wind. Pardon me as I center this camera. Because of that, I really don't know how I feel about checking easy. Easy relative to par scoring conditions. Because if we look back at previous tournaments at Port Royal, when the wind picks up, it gets pretty difficult. Average. In moderate conditions, it can be easy, but it can get pretty challenging with wind, and there looks to be a lot of wind. So I really don't think I like the easy relative to par filter. Instead, what we absolutely know we can check is the short course filter. This is one of the shortest courses on tour. It is probably the shortest course on tour by par, since this is not a par 70, it's a par 71 at only 6,800 yards. So in the past 36 rounds or 2 years, your top performers on short courses have been Ben Griffin, Ryo Hitatsune, Mackenzie Hughes, Carson Young, Grayson Sigg, Johnny Vegas, Michael Kim, Mark Hubbard, Vince Whaley, and Tyler Duncan. Again, skipping Taylor Montgomery, he has withdrawn. So I would definitely give much more preference to the wind performers. Players like Scott Piercy, who generally plays really, really well in the wind. Seamus Power generally plays well in the wind. You can see Scott Piercy right here. Very, very good in the windiest of conditions. So those are the kind of players that I would be keyed in on early this week in terms of research. But speaking of, even though this is a international event and we don't have shot link data, there is some data we can gather and take a look at for Port Royal. So let's go ahead and do that for what we can look at, much like we did for the Worldwide Technologies last week. No strokes gained, but we'll be able to take a look at some distance, some greens and good drives, mainly par 3s, 4s, and 5s, and see what ranges we want to key in on. Only because I mentioned it last night. I ended up being correct that the par 3s actually did play a decently significant factor at the Worldwide Technologies. Things just didn't break my way. What I was incorrect on was just how much the par 4s didn't. It was all in the 450 to 5s. And I ended up looking at both of these ranges, but it was clearly incorrect to look at this one. But anyway, I just wanted to recap that since I mentioned it on last night's show. Let's get into Port Royal and the Bermuda Championship, shall we? So, no strokes gained. Taking a look at distance and greens, fairways, this distance number is actually a little bit higher than what you would expect. For Bermuda, or for the Bermuda Championship, distance is 25%. Now, I think that is probably a bit misleading because players aren't afraid to be in the rough here. All things being equal, and a lot of these holes do have some forced layups, so guys are, either carrying their irons further, or just are not really, like I said, concerned about being in the rough. Now, distance wasn't that big of a factor last year, but the preceding 4 years, it was. Fairways, not really. You see, fairways have never really been a big deal except for in the inaugural event when Brendan Todd won. If you take that number away, that number is extremely low. So players really aren't gaining a whole lot with fairways. Instead, it's kind of the good drives and greens. These greens are average in size. And you can see the good drives that started off fairly well, but then have tapered off over the years. Greens, a little bit the same. If anything, I would probably be interested in good drives gained considering the wind. Players are probably going to want to have some control over their golf ball. And it's harder to control your golf ball when it's in the rough. Nothing really stands out to me except for maybe good drives and greens. Whereas, wrong way. Like last week, like distance didn't matter, fairways didn't matter, greens, all that. So it was very clear that nothing mattered last week in this page view. I can probably make an argument for good drives gained, but it's not overwhelming by any means. Again, 2.7% more important than the average full field course. Not a whole lot to be gained there. We move to scoring. There are a few eagles around Port Royal with those short par fives, but it's a lot in the birdies gained. But with the wind, I might venture to say bogey avoidance might be something as well. You see both of them about 5% more important. Hard to say. We'll probably look at both tonight, but I guess technically you would have to want to lean to birdies gained. This is a slightly low outlier. That's a couple of really low outliers, but these are a couple of high ones. I don't know. Bogey avoidance has been pretty scattered. Very high, very low, whereas typically bogey avoidance is the consistent metric and birdies gained is the spike. This is actually the consistent metric, so we're probably going to want to look at birdies gained, or birdies are better. That's close. And then moving into par 3s, 4s, and 5s, this is where you really, really get into some meat and potatoes, as they say. You see the par 3s here over the first 5 years of the tournament, 1.68. And the par 5s are only at a 1.69. So the par 3s and the par 5s are carrying the same amount of weight for the finishers in the top 30. Interesting to note. Now, almost 70% of your strokes gained in the par 3s come to this range. So probably going to be focusing on those two longer par 3s. And then for the par 5s, even a heavier percentage of the par 5s are on the two short par 5s. So probably going to have quite a bit of emphasis into here. If not, look at this range of par 5s only. So it looks like we're able to isolate par 3s and par 5s of these specific lengths. So the par 4s, not really a surprise considering there are several shorter par 4s here at Port Royal. We only have one par 4 that measures over 450 on the scorecard, and it's at 458. Looking like, for the most part, these have been where the bread and butter is for top 30 finishers at the Butterfield Bermuda. And in fact, 2022, the par 4s were really low. This is a really low outlier compared to the others. And the par 5s weren't out of line, so was it the par 3s that really gained? Not really. Par 3s have been pretty darn consistent. Par 5s have been pretty darn consistent. So for whatever reason, the par 4s in 2022 just weren't all that much. But it's pretty clear here. You can see we're going to be looking at these two ranges of par 4s. So there's a look at some of the detailed data regarding Port Royal. We'll move back to Fantasy National. Fix the page view there. And we'll move to driving in greens and distance. I'm still going to go probably good drives gained. Yeah, in fact, let's do good drives gained in the wind. I don't think I will have this metric and filter combination Wednesday night in the mixed condition model, but for our research moving forward for wagers and consideration of players for lineups, your top good drives gained performers in the past 36 rounds in moderate and windy conditions: Lucas Glover, Ryan Moore, Carson Young, Andrew Putnam, Matthew Neesmith, Martin Laird, Sean O'Hare, Doug Gim, Lonto Griffin, Kevin Yu, and Kevin Yu. So there's your top 10. You can see almost all of these guys are fairway finders. Lonto Griffin's got a little bit of distance, at least compared to this field. Kevin Yu is just an elite driver of the golf ball. Fine. And most of these guys are pretty adept at hitting greens as well, especially in the wind. But there's a look at your top good drives gained performers in the wind. We'll take a look at good drives gained on short courses. So when courses are short, your top good drives gained players: Carson Young, Grayson Sigg, Ches Reavie, Dylan Wu, Hayden Buckley, James Hahn, Kevin Yu, Zach Blair, Russell Knox, Kelly Craft. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty sold on looking at good drives gained. Players are either in the fairway or they're hitting the green from the rough. I think that's probably what we would want to look at this week. We'll move to scoring. And normally I like to match a scoring metric like birdies, bogeys, with the easier, difficult relative to par. I don't think I'm comfortable using a scoring filter this week until we get closer to the tournament and that forecast kind of stabilizes or we get a better idea of exactly how the tournament is going to play. So instead, we'll do the same thing. We'll take a look at birdies and bogeys on short courses and in the wind. So first, we'll take a look at birdies are better gained on short courses. Your top birdies are better gained players on short courses: Trace Crow, Johnny Vegas, Mav McNeely, Vince Whaley, Alex Smalley, Jacob Bridgman, Robbie Shelton, Garrick Higgo, Mac Hughes, and Ben Griffin. Again, skipping Taylor Montgomery, he's withdrawn. Most of these guys are pretty good bogey avoiders on short courses as well. Todd Reavie, Hitsatsune, Chesson Hadley, Aaron Baddeley, Mark Hubbard, Vince Whaley, Doug Gim, Seamus Power. And then we'll take a look at in the wind as well. Moderate and windy. So your top birdies are better gained players. Let's do the last 50 rounds. Your top birdies are better gained players in those conditions: Nick Taylor, Scott Piercy, Austin Smotherman, Brennan Todd, Pearson Coody, Mark Hubbard, Ben Griffin, Roger Sloan, Justin Suh, David Lipsky. So more than likely we're going to be looking at birdies are better gained, because if, for example, we go and check some of these prior leaderboards, we're not going to go through all the statistics, but like last year, Seamus Power, or 2 years ago, Seamus Power still won at 19 under. And the winds were, decently up there. Lucas Herbert in the Hurricane, essentially on Sunday, still got to 15 under. So guys are still going to have to go low. Brian Gay and Wyndham Clark in a playoff with the wind. So guys are still going to have to get fair share of birdies. So the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking probably birdies are better gained, maybe in the wind, maybe on short courses, but I'm probably going to lean towards birdies are better gained this week as opposed to the bogey avoidance. We'll move to par threes. Your top par 3 performers, and again, we're going to focus on the 225 plus, because all of the, or most of the strokes gained came from that range. Bermuda par 3. 101 out of a 168. So a lot. 70% or so on those longer par 3s. So in 2024, your top par 3 performers from 225 plus: Robbie Shelton, Ben Griffin, Trace Crowe, Mackenzie Hughes, Carl Yuan, Daniel Berger, James Hahn, Chesson Hadley, David Skins. And then moving to par 4s. Again, the emphasis is on these 350 to 4 and 400 to 450. So let's take a look here. We'll do 350 to 4 first. Shelton, Gim, Wilson Furr, Martin Laird, Matty Schmid, Jacob Bridgman, Trainer, Austin Cook, K.H. Lee, Kevin Strillman. Big star next to Bridgman, 6th and 11th at those two shorter ranges of par 4s. Doug Gim definitely deserves an honorable mention, 2nd and 24th. Bridgman, Andrew Putnam, 16th and 2nd. Zach Blair, 18th and 6th. Lucas Glover, 20th and 13th. Malnati, maybe, 27th and 9th. So, those are a few of the players that you'll want to focus on if you want to put a lot of emphasis in the par 4s. And I'll sort there. Won't go through it, but there's your top par 4 performers from 400 to 450. So again, I'd be focused on players like maybe Justin Lauer, but Andrew Putnam, Zach Blair, Jacob Bridgman, absolutely, 6th and 11th. Glover, 20th and 13th. They are playing these short par 4s extremely well, and that is what is so abundant at Port Royal. 10 of the 11 par 4s measure to these lengths. And then lastly, we'll go to par 5s, or at least lastly for Fantasy National. Par 5s, 500 to 550. Kevin Tway, Doug Gim, Cam Champ, K.H. Lee, S.H. Kim, Kevin Yu, Seamus Power, Carson Young, Mav McNeely, and Austin Smotherman. All right, let's move to the early look file. Get a feel for the players who have played or done the best at these particular skill sets that we've talked about tonight. First thing we're going to do, let's take a look at good drives gained. Your top good drives gained performers in the 5 years at Port Royal. Those players are Putnam, it's only once. Russell Knox is now in the field, so I will take care of that. While I'm at it, don't mind me, I need to remove Highsmith, which I don't know if he's played, and Taylor Montgomery, who I thought had played, but maybe he hadn't either. So if you see them, just know that they are out. I haven't had a chance to update this file. But your top good drives gained performers, Russell Knox, Tyler Duncan, Kevin Yu, Matty Schmid, Sean O'Hare, 3 for 3. Quite interesting. Norlander is 1 for 4. So very poor performance, but has been good with the good drives gained. Glover, a little bit less in terms of success. Todd, your inaugural winner. Brandon Wu again. So there's a look at some players who have been good at good drives gained. I'm going to skip the birdies and eagles and such. Let's just go straight into the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, because I do want to show you all some of the research that I posted to social media earlier today. So your top par 3 performers from 225 plus in the 5 years, specifically at Port Royal: Roger Sloan, Sean O'Hare, Peter Malnati, Badley's only 1 for 2. Compost is only 1 for 2. Vincent Whaley's 2 for 3. Good on these long par 3s. McNeely's played them well. Higo's played them well. Nick Watney has played them well. Brandon Wu has played them well. Let's do the par 5s. Par 5s, 500 to 550. And we'll finish on the research. Kevin Yu, really taking advantage of these shorter par 5s at Port Royal. Matty Schmid, Vince Whaley. Look at Seamus Power, 4 for 4. Also a winner in 2022. Tyler Duncan, Tyson Alexander, Chesson Hadley. I like a lot this week. Sloan, Brendan Todd, Dylan Wu. Rogers is 3 for 4 here. Novak. Oh, there it is. William McGirt. He was the other one. I knew I would remember once I saw it. William McGirt is the other player who is now in thanks to the 2 withdrawals. There's a look at the players who have been the best at the par 5s. 500 to 550. Okay. We're going to finish the show off with some of the research that I posted to social media. Let's first talk about form. And I'm going to be honest with you. These champions at the Bermuda have not had much form at all. Yes, Camilo Villegas was coming off a very good Worldwide Technologies last year, but missed cut at the Sanderson Farms, his only other fall event. He had not played well during the year. See Seamus Power, a top 30 at the Sanderson Farms is okay, but look at the irons. They've been really bad. CJ Cup was very poor considering this is a no-cut event. There was about 70 players in the field, finished in the bottom third. So he was not in good form. Lucas Herbert, not in good form, 2 miscuts. So recent form is not a factor at all. Not a factor at all, at least in terms of finishes. Really, Camilo Villegas is the only one that had any kind of form, but even he missed a cut before the Worldwide Technologies last year. So what does matter? Well, if we go to the winner matrix, we see that players who have played here before have had some success. Of course, Brendan Todd wins the inaugural. No one had seen the course before. Brian Gay finished top 5 and then wins. Lucas Herbert hadn't seen it. But look at Seamus Power. 31st, 37th, nothing great, but he at least had some success. Top 15 and then wins. Look at Camilo Villegas. Again, nothing spectacular here. But what you don't see are miscuts. Players had at least been adept enough to know how to play the course enough before they won. So one of the first things that I noticed was that if a player has missed a cut here, that's a pretty big red flag. Pretty big red flag. All right, let's take a look at a couple other things here. This right here is performance in their last event before the Bermuda Championship. I want you to notice, look at the putting. Everybody had gained in their previous event. Putting. Now, it's hard to tell with Villegas, but him finishing second, I would have to fathom he was at least field average in terms of putting. So everybody had been in really good recent form putting. Everyone who had won at the Butterfield Bermuda came in with a hot putter. Decently good around the green as well, as you can see. Irons didn't matter at all, as you can see. And the only other thing that I will mention, and there was no way for me to notate it, but I made a pretty big emphasis last night about the Tiff Eagle Bermuda. And those courses, again, those courses that are continuous on the PGA Tour, Bay Hill, host of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Kapalua, host of the Century. PGA National, host of the Honda or Cognizant. Sea Island, where we'll be next week at the RSM. And, of course, Port Royal. Those are the 5 courses that are consistent on the PGA Tour that have TIFF Eagle Bermuda greens. Why is that significant? Every single champion, all 5 champions, the last time they were on TIFF Eagle Bermuda, whether it was Bay Hill, whether it was Kapalua, PGA National, even sometimes as far back as the previous year's RSM, a whole year ago, the last time a champion played on TIFF Eagle Bermuda greens, they were positive. So you'll want to take a look at those tournaments, see who has putt well on those tournaments, at least recently. So go back and check. Probably there's not too many players that played this year's Arnold Palmer that's in this field, but go check the Cognizant Classic. Go check. Let's see. I think that might be it. Bay Hill, Kapalua, probably the same as Bay Hill. Not too many people there. And, of course, we'll be at the RSM next week. So you might want to take a look at last year's RSM, but really take a look at the Cognizant Classic from this year. And the players who are in the field, or who were in the field that week, and if they're in the field this week, see how they putt. That might be a pretty good indicator. So we'll finish the show off. I'll go back to Fantasy National. Because I'm making such a big emphasis about it, your top putters on TIFF Eagle Bermuda, Bay Hill, PGA National, Plantation Course, Port Royal, and Sea Island. Your top putters on TIFF Eagle Bermuda: Brennan Todd, Chesson Hadley, Ben Taylor, Andrew Putnam, Sam Ryder, Troy Merritt, Ben Griffin, Kevin Kisner, Martin Traynor, Johnny Vegas. So I will leave you all with that. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, watched, listened, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. A reminder that moving forward this week, be aware of the forecast, considering how chaotic it looks right now. And then, of course, make sure you are subscribed to Gabe's article. It is free to do. That way you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat Wednesday night after calls and the DFS Tactics show. And then, of course, go check out social media. My handle's also in the description for the research that I posted today and the players in the field this week who fit the criteria that I just talked about. But thanks again for all the support. Really appreciate it. For all of the wagers that you've made so far this week for the Bermuda Championship, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Bermuda Championship, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.